I'm just giving everybody a minute to get situated and log in. I see a couple people connecting to their audio. So I'm just going to give you a minute and then we'll get started. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm just going to put a survey within the chat if you would be so kind as to rate your experience. I'm going to put it there at the beginning and then again at the end. So that we can just, if we're gathering your feedback, so we can learn a little bit more about what you'd like to hear about, what you'd like to learn about, what you find value in for the presentations that are brought to you. And so if you could just take a minute, either afterwards at the end, that would be great. So hi, welcome. My name is Kayla Daly, and I am a board certified music therapist and licensed mental health counselor. I'm also a Temple University PhD student, working towards my doctorate in clinical music therapy practices. So while I am not presenting on music therapy today, if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. And so today we're focused on creating healthy habits. And so I'm going to share my screen and just present this. There it is. And I will check back in periodically if folks have questions in the chat, but I can't see the chat while I present, so I will just check back periodically. So don't feel, I'm not going to miss you. I promise I'll come back to you. And then we'll have some questions right at the end. Okay. But today we're just talking about creating some healthy habits. And typically healthy habits start with small, accessible changes that will grow into long-term changes. And so that's where we'll be focusing. And what I wanted to start with was my 3 M's. My 3 M's. My 3 M's are looking at how we make these small changes, is choosing things that are meaningful to us, right? If it's meaningful to someone else, it's probably not going to be long lasting. It really needs to be something that's meaningful or creates purpose for ourselves. Focusing on how we are mindful about the changes that we need to see in our lives, and then how we can measure them, right? So like looking at them empirically and saying, I'm doing just a little bit better than I was yesterday with creating some healthy habits. So I'm going to go through these 3 steps together, each individually one by one, but the steps, I would like to present basically some really concrete examples of what might be helpful. And then you can kind of give me some of your feedback when we get to the questions area about what you feel is helpful and maybe what's worked for you. We can kind of share some of those resources. So from a mental health perspective, we're looking at what's called a salutogenic model of health. I present on this quite a bit, and I like the salutogenic model of health because essentially it looks at all individuals as being inherently kind of human. We all have our unique traits and nobody's perfect. And therefore, what's meaningful to one person might not be meaningful to another. And so when I create meaningful habits for my own personal growth, they need to be individualized. They need to matter to me. If they matter to my mom, it's probably not going to be something that matters as much to me. And this is rooted really in the counseling work that we do around self-efficacy. Okay, so in looking at being self-efficacious, we really have to spend time with ourselves, which can be really challenging in today's day and age, right? It's kind of a luxury if you get to spend any time at all with yourself. So when you kind of spend a little time with yourself, take a moment to breathe and really look at what's important and what creates meaningfulness and purpose in your life. That's the central focus point of where our personal growth journey begins. It's what we found, like, build our foundation upon when we are looking to establish some healthy habits over time. So, for example, if someone in my life is like, oh, you're always so busy, and it's really getting in the way of your ability to, you know, um, be less anxious or be calm, and I'm hearing a lot of that from people around me, but it's not necessarily meaningful to me. I'm not going to work on that skill, right? If I come to myself and say, you know what, I really want to spend more time with my kids, that's meaningful to me. That's where my purpose is. That's what's meaningful to me. Then I'm going to have the center focus of this goal in my life to create these healthy habits, or you know, yeah, these long-term healthy habits. I'm going to start with these small, meaningful personal growth goals. And if it's going to be, I want to spend maybe an extra 20 minutes at the end of the day reading my kids books. And that's going to start off with this small little goal. And maybe I can do it 3 out of the 5 days out of the week during the busy week, work week. And that's where I'm going to start. And, oftentimes when we set out that maybe it's 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden it grows to 10 minutes. And then we find that we have like a beautiful bedtime routine that builds in 30 minutes of reading, and my kid really likes it, and it helps them wind down. And suddenly the evenings are a little bit easier. And it's all because we've established a bedtime routine. But the bedtime routine wasn't something that I set out to do originally. It was that little 5-minute reading to my child because that was what was meaningful to me. It was meaningful to me to build in a little more time with my kids. So the first thing that we're looking at in establishing healthy habits is making sure that they're meaningful to you and personalized. Not what somebody else wants for you, but what you really desire for yourself. The second part of this is mindful. Now, in the 70s, there was this huge mindfulness movement. John Kabat-Zinn is very popular in America for a lot of his writings on mindfulness, and a lot of his research and writing comes from Eastern methods of practice. And so, looking at historically what being mindful is about, a lot of people have misconceptions about what it means to meditate or be mindful. Is that we have this like beautiful aesthetic of someone in yoga pants, and my mind is just perfectly clear and I have no problems at all, or I'm able to just be really present in the moment and nothing bothers me. And that couldn't really be farther from the truth. Okay. When we are mindful, it's not necessarily that we don't experience challenging emotions or feelings. It's that we're making a continuous, gentle commitment to being in process. Okay. And this is really important because I think that, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to go forward. This is really important because I think we often misunderstand what it means to be mindful. To continue to practice, to continue to be committed to being mindful and intentional about what we're doing is really understanding that, again, with the salutogenic model of health, that we are human. We are inevitably going to have up and down days. We are inevitably going to have tough days, but we're also inevitably going to have good days. This is just kind of a part of our growth process. And if we come to understand the ebb and flow of things, that's the main idea of being mindful. And so this helps us create habits that really don't focus on obsessing about the past and, oh God, I said that thing that it was so bad, and it was that one time 3 years ago and they never forgot about it, whatever it may be in the past, or focusing on the future. Oh, I have to plan. If I don't plan for next year, then I'm not going to be set up for the year after that. And, that's the crux of anxiety and depression, as they say. Depressed, you might be stuck on the past, and anxiety, you might be stuck on the future. Being mindful about the present helps us to kind of work through acceptance of challenging emotions and feelings. It doesn't mean we don't have them. So if you have a friend who's like, yeah, I meditate, everything's chill. It's not that everything's chill and they're lying. No, but in reality, it's not that everything is just perfect all the time, right? It's that we are making that gentle commitment to come back to a place that says, I'm going to feel through my anger, as opposed to let my anger take over everything and permeate everything around me. I have a couple metaphors for this. Typically, I like to talk about food. So, for example, anger. Anger is an inevitable part of life. If anger is a food, maybe it's that yucky vegetable that we don't like to eat, right? And so we would like that vegetable. Anger is a part of life. It's inevitable. So it's going to be on the plate. But we would like it to be a workable size. We don't want it to be the entire plate of food. We would like some mac and cheese. We would like some things that we like to eat on there. And we would understand that it all works together as a meal. But that maybe it's beets. Maybe anger is beets. Beets are not going to take over the entire meal. When anger starts to seep into the other foods and it becomes soupy, when we have soup, that it's interrupting our lives. It starts to really infect everything. It starts to cause irritability with the kids. It starts to mean that you're not sleeping better. It starts to mean that maybe you're eating your feelings. All of these things start to happen. If we're mindful about this, right, we're kind of understanding that anger is going to be on the plate. We're trying to keep our food separate, right? We're understanding that it's an inevitable part of life, but that we're going to kind of move through and just understand that that vegetable is going to have to be on the plate, but that we can still make it work. Okay. When it becomes soup is when it becomes really, really hard to separate these things out and keep them the size that they should be, right? The size that they should be. So that's really important. I also have a metaphor for this with kids, because I recently had a child. So when we have children that kind of wander away from a play group, for example, we don't reprimand them and drag them back to group and make them sit and make them focus. They're little children. They're supposed to run and be free and play. But we do want them to pay attention to the activity at hand. And so we make the gentle commitment to gently guide them back. And that's what you're going to do with your mind. Your mind is going to get swept up in anger at some point. It's inevitable. Your mind is going to get swept up in anxiety. It's inevitable. These things happen. But when we're working on mindfulness, and practicing mindfulness, it means that we are gently guiding our mind back to where we would like it to be. So if we'd like to move through anger, we acknowledge it, we validate it. I'm so angry about this right now. But we also understand that if there's energy being expended in that emotion where it becomes soup and it's taking over everything, it's probably not productive. It's probably not serving us. And the more mindful we can be about the size that it is supposed to be, we keep it the size that it is supposed to be. So I hope that helps explain mindfulness in a little bit more of a palatable way, because I think oftentimes we have a misconception about what it means to meditate or what it means to be perfectly peaceful in this mindful space of the just like it's almost like myths about mindfulness that we have. And so understanding that mistakes are a part of growth and moving through them is a part of the learning process. Can really help us understand that it's this gentle commitment to just continuing to feel through these inevitable emotions that will happen, and choosing to do so in a way that through accepting their existence, we can really come to a place of control of how we respond, right? We can control how we respond to these situations. So, and then the last one is measured. And so I didn't have a slide for this on purpose, because I feel like measuring your progress is really individual to each person. But we like it, in America especially, we like empirical data. We like to look at how do we know it's better? Statistically, how do we know it's better? Statistically, since the pandemic, we've seen rates of anxiety, depression, and PTSD and complex trauma skyrocket to, 30 to 40% higher than before the pandemic. It's absolutely unbelievable. And we're working to have more providers, right? So that people can get mental health help. In a recent survey last June, there was about 5,500 people that were surveyed about their symptoms. And it was, I think, 40.9% of people were experiencing these pretty severe symptoms of anxiety, depression, or trauma. And so this is significant. This event has been significant. And to be able to measure over time, not only to notice where there is a problem that we need to address, for example, the majority of folks, almost half of folks that are taking surveys are presenting with mental health problems, right? for a large sample size, but also that we're able to measure our own individual progress. That's really what's meaningful. What's meaningful is not if I'm doing better than Sally or Bob or Michael over here. It's that I'm doing a little bit better than I was yesterday. I really want to make sure that I'm just kind of working on my own personal best. I actually, my husband laughs at me because I talk a lot about golf. And I don't play golf at all, but I like the metaphor for golf for life, because in golf, while you're playing the game with other people, you're really only trying to beat your own best personal score. You're trying to be a better player than you were yesterday. It's not necessarily really about being better than other people as much as it is being better than you were the day before in golf. And so it's kind of similar with how we measure our own personal progress. We're not looking at suddenly there's a massive change and everything, lifestyle change. Everything's perfect. Everything's great. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for are small changes. Yesterday was really rough, and today, my anxiety seems just a little bit better. Yesterday, I might have been a 6 on a Likert scale, 6 being my anxiety was pretty pervasive. It was bad. It was interrupting my life. I was yelling at my kids, for example, things like that. And today, you know what? I'm a 3 because I did some deep breathing exercises. I decided I really wanted to be intentional about the way I used my voice around my children. And I decided that what's meaningful to me is that if I'm running a little bit behind, it's just going to have to wait. And I'm going to have to, manage my time a little bit better. Things like that. So the way that you measure, the third M, if you will, the way that you measure your progress of creating healthy habits is going to be individualized to what works best for you. And so what we know, okay, what we know is that when we have these built-in regular habits, we tend to see better outcomes. It doesn't mean that we're perfect about them again, but it just means that our whole health and well-being is being addressed. When we lack self-awareness around these issues, both our physical and mental health, we see that we're at increased risk for, like I said, anxiety, depression, PTSD, especially with the pandemic and all of the loss that we've experienced over the last year and a half. Physical diseases, high blood pressure, stress presents as a physical disease if it's left unaddressed. So we really want to be careful about that. And if you have a regular exercise regime, this is something that's often said in exercise regimes, that you're not expecting massive change right away. This is something that over time, calorically, you just build up that little window of extra movement that helps make a difference in the long run. Longitudinally is the word that I was looking for. Longitudinally, you'll see just a small, slow change. But then over a year, you see a big change when you compare what your health might have looked like a year ago. And it's very similar to the way that we approach our mental health. We want small changes that kind of shape into long-term longevitous change. Okay. And so when I like to present a way of making these changes, the meaningful, mindful, and measured changes within the biopsychosocial model. So what's one change that you might make for your biological needs? A really concrete way of looking at this is maybe I sign up for regular automated medication refills for my medicine. So now I know that I'll always have it. It gets mailed to me, for example, so that I won't forget. And that is one less thing. That's a good habit that has created an opportunity for me to never miss my meds. So then my physical health is really a priority to me. A psychological need, if I'm creating a healthy habit there, maybe I see a therapist regularly. If that's not accessible, maybe I join a support group that's free online. Maybe I like to use free apps like calm.com or headspace.com to address my need for some type of stress relief or help with sleep, things like that. But I build it into my schedule as a healthy habit for my psychological needs. An example of my social or emotional needs is maybe meeting up with a friend once a week for coffee. Okay, these are really concrete examples of something that can become habitual and create a really beautiful support system. The other things that there are 3 additional things that I like to add to features that I like to add to the biopsychosocial model. One is cultural, so your cultural needs. Again, excuse me, that would be individual to each person's individual culture. Um, your creative needs. So folks who like to journal or make art or listen to music or make music, anything like that. Creative health is a real thing, and we're doing lots of research on it, and that folks tend to do well in communities, which obviously, as we've seen, has been impacted by the pandemic. And so, fostering creative health in many different ways can be just so important. And then the last one, so I said creativity. This is what happens. I had a child and now I can't remember anything. Creativity, your creative health, your cultural health, and your spiritual health. And so again, spirituality might be visiting the spiritual community center that's in your town or city. It might be going to church on Sundays. It might be meditating, whatever that means, again, for your individual self and your individual family. But that these are really nice ways of building in the 3 M's to these concrete small habits that then grow into longevitous benefits. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to check in with the chat in a moment so that if you have any questions about that. This is just giving you a little bit, I know I said the word salutogenic model of health a couple times earlier in the presentation. So this is just kind of showing you the difference between the 2 models of health. Pathogenesis is basically a fancy word for the medical model, that there's a symptom, right? There's a problem. We don't want the problem, and we're looking to get back to a cure. We're curing it, and it looks at as humans as being inherently healthy, and that we're trying to get back to that baseline. It's very idealistic. It's not bad. It's just different. Okay, and the salutogenic model of health looks at folks as inherently human. We all have these little flaws, and it looks at what is meaningful to the patient. So I like to use the example of oncology work. I've done a lot of oncology work with my music therapy practice. And typically, my patients find that their outcomes, how they're feeling, how they receive their treatment, how they feel after their treatment, is impacted significantly by spending time in music therapy if they are a candidate for music therapy. Why might that be? Well, the music that we're working on within the session is really meaningful to them, right? And the music neurologically is actually helping their brain function a little bit better when it can be really quite foggy due to treatment. And so we're seeing neurological benefits, we're seeing social benefits, and we're seeing a whole health model where patients who have music therapy in their oncology care tend to have better outcomes and also higher satisfaction rates than those without. And it's because they're looking at the whole person, not just the symptom. And I hope that makes sense. So in salutogenic models of health, we're looking at the whole person and what's meaningful to them in their care. And not just treating with an intervention, say, for example, just chemotherapy. We're looking at all of the other things they need. So a lot of medical facilities in oncology work have taken this model and said, yes, this is absolutely what we want. We want to look at the person's nutrition. We want to look at their exercise regimen. We want to look at their access to arts, music, art therapy, all of these things that really bring a positive outlook to patients as they're undergoing a really serious medical condition. And we tend to see better outcomes when the whole patient is addressed as opposed to just the symptom. So that explains that a little bit. And then this was just some examples because I liked to give you tips on looking at our emotional needs. So for example, when an emotional need pops up like loneliness or anxiety, we tend to look at them as like, ugh, I'm anxious, this is awful. Or I'm stressed, this is awful, it feels awful, because it does feel awful. But oftentimes it's our body trying to let us know that we need something. Okay, and so examples of what our body might be telling us that we need, right? When I'm feeling anxious, maybe I need a little bit more time breathing, or maybe I need more sleep, maybe I need exercise, maybe I need to manage my stress a little bit differently. So this is a list over here of some of the things that are just some examples that we can establish as small healthy habits that can grow into longevitous habits. Okay, so maybe for example, I work with people all day long. Maybe I need a little bit more alone time. Maybe if I start to feel burnt out and I recognize the signs of burnout, that maybe that's something I have to build into my week, is that I'll have an hour of just time alone, by myself reading, something like that. This is hard, right? Because what we have to do is, again, from the beginning of the presentation, I said we have to spend a little time with ourselves and give ourselves some self-compassion. This is not an easy thing to do. When people say, oh, self-care, they think manicures, or they think, going and watching TV and vegging out and things like that. Self-care is actually very hard work, very, very hard work, and very much hard work, excuse me. And self-compassion, like I said, while seemingly obvious or silly, it goes a long, long way. And so, again, being mindful, we're gently noticing the feelings and allowing ourselves to feel through them. And we're validating that, yes, this is hard and I can do hard things. Okay. And so, an example of this, again, maybe a guided relaxation exercise. You can make them your own. A lot of folks I talk to say, I hate them. I hate listening to guided relaxation. Blah. So what I always challenge people to do is to make it your own. If you can individualize it to do something. So what I mean is, if listening to calm.com doesn't work for you, maybe an interactive music listening relaxation exercise might be better, as opposed to imaging. Maybe you like to listen to music. So things like that. And then this is helpful when I talk about how you individualize your self-care habits list. So these are just some examples of how you can do that for yourself, like regularly scheduled visits with a therapist, or regularly scheduled visits with the doctor to manage your physical health, or regularly scheduled visits with a friend to manage your social health. Okay. Maybe you have go-to websites that help for resources like mindful.org or calm.com. There's also innerhealthstudio.com. There's a couple of these websites that are great. And so whatever this list looks like for you is going to be tailored to your needs. It's not going to be what anybody else needs. But if it's meaningful to you, if it's measurable and you can see the change happening, you're more likely to follow through with it. And so I gave you a couple of examples of these websites, because we're just kind of winding down. I want to get to questions. But these are just some examples. As humans, we tend to thrive on routine. So, trying to set out some clothes the night before, make a lunch, just making your morning that much easier, right? Just a little bit. If you're not leaving the house, remembering that showering will probably help you feel better, right? Especially for those who suffer from anxiety and depression. Sometimes that shower can really make a huge difference, okay? And these are small things. Maybe it's a sip of water in the morning, right? And you give yourself that pat on the back for that sip of water in the morning. I'm a little bit more hydrated than I was a moment ago. Sometimes that's as small as we have to start, and that's okay. All right. Wherever your starting point is, it's enough, because it's for you. And so this is my email here in the center, and this is my clinic's website. So if you have any desire to learn a little bit more about expressive arts, which would be art therapy, music therapy, things like that, you can go there. And if you have any questions that you don't want to put in the chat now, you can send them to my email. But I'm going to stop the share and check in and see. And we've got about 15 minutes for questions. And I know I posted before, but I also am going to repost this just to make sure that everybody has the survey. If you haven't already, I'm going to post it twice. But are there questions? I'm happy to answer any questions. It's a lot of information. Oh no, the survey expired. Hang on. Check it. Absolutely, Colleen. Let me talk about that in just a minute. Let me just make sure the survey that I'm copying and pasting it right so that everybody has. Let me see if the link. Let's try. I'm going to try it. See see if I can do it. Oh, it brought me to the survey. So I just post the link individually. So, and then I clicked it in from the chat, and you should be able to access it that way because it did work for me. And okay, so we've got a couple questions. So first question is talking about music to help calm the mind and fall asleep. So nobody likes this answer, but it really is about your personal taste. So for me, I personally need silence to sleep. I like white noise. Also, my infant likes white noise, so we do white noise. In terms of white noise, I always suggest going to Brookstone. Their website has a really nice white noise machine, and there's also pink noise. And pink noise tends to be a little bit, the way that the sound is dispersed is different. So, you can experiment with pink noise and white noise. But for music, so some people really pay attention to language, the lyrics or the singing that's happening over music. So, and also hard consonant sounds tend to just wake up the brain a little bit. So we might stay away from suggesting music that has a lot of percussiveness. That seems pretty obvious. But some people like something, for example, sounding like Enya. Some people don't. Some people find that listening to rain sounds with some light music in the background sounds good to them. Some people don't. Some people really love classical music, but as we know, classical music has a very broad range, and some classical pieces have massive dynamic changes. And I mean, even myself, I found that out personally. So Mozart tends to be really exuberant in his changes in his writing. So you'll see that a piece might start off really quietly, and my baby was sleeping, and then all of a sudden it's dun 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 dun. He's suddenly very awake. And so what I do recommend to people is setting aside, if possible, if you have the privilege of having a little bit of time, setting aside some time and looking through some music that you feel is calming for you. So experimenting with maybe Bach tends to be very organized and predictable in a lot of his pieces. So maybe a classical piece of music in that way might help you. If you don't like classical music and you like relaxation music that sounds like something you might hear at the spa, there are playlists on YouTube that I highly recommend looking through. The playlists, you can type in relaxing meditation music on YouTube or things like that, and search through and find some of them that you like. I personally love listening to Andy McKee's acoustic guitar playing. That tends to be also something that helps me relax. And so it's instrumental music, but it's very he's a fingerstyle guitar player, and I know that as a guitar player myself, I find it's meaningful to me. I like it. It tends to be relaxing. And so I made a playlist for myself when I tend to not going to sleep, but going to relax, that I would listen to. And I use that a lot with my clients. I hate to be that person that says like it's individual to you, but it really is, honestly and truthfully, and to spend some time figuring out what it is that helps you sleep. For music, and typically I like to put it on a timer so that it will fade if possible. It'll fade off. So number one, you're not burning energy from your phone or whatever music device you're using, but also nothing unexpected will happen where it might wake you up when you're coming back around your sleep cycle, because we all cycle through our sleep cycles, and there is a point when you go back into light sleep that if music was playing, you might wake up. So we don't want that to happen. So just planning for that. I hope that's helpful. Journaling on some of the sites I mentioned. If they have a journaling feature, the question is how private is journaling on the sites that I mentioned. I haven't journaled on those sites specifically. The suggestion in the slide was that if you create a resource journal for yourself or you have a physical journal for yourself, that might be helpful. I do know that there are online journals that are very private and triple encrypted and HIPAA protected for that reason, because people are putting private information. I would check that within the support services of a website, if you were going to use a website for journaling, that you would check within um, the settings to make sure that it is triple encrypted, or if you want to keep a triple encrypted journal online, that you would do that. I'm sure Google has a platform for that. I would just double check that it is in fact private, and also that it's backed up. That's another thing. If you want to make sure that your journaling is backed up, um, so that you wouldn't lose it if anything on the cloud somehow got deleted. And oh gosh, getting away from the computer is so hard. I agree with you because I myself have this issue. So everyone can see this question. Important to get out of the house just for a walk during the day, but tips for folks who can't always get away from the computer. So if you do have a computer, then you do have access to hopefully some type of calendar with alerts. And what I typically do is set up alerts, and I stud them throughout the day when I know I have a 15-minute block of time, or maybe it's a 5-minute block of time. And sometimes, I will be perfectly honest with you, sometimes they are just reminding me to get some water or go to the bathroom, because with online, we've been able to pack in so much more. I teach at a local university. I'm doing my PhD program. I just had a baby, and I'm also doing, I have run my own clinical practice. And so sometimes when I have a packed day, that's what it is. It's reminding me to just get some water, get some food when I can, making sure that I get up from the computer. If it's a better day, which typically is most days, right? So this one's on a Wednesday. My days are packed, but every other day is typically a little bit more balanced. I build in the alert reminder to get up and take a walk around the house if I can't get outside, or if it's raining. Also, I might stud in little ideas like do 10 jumping jacks if I can't go for the walk, but I'm going to do something right by the computer. It just reminds me to stand up. I swear by the alerts. I think they're great. I think that if you can build them into your calendar, it'll just pop up on your computer and it'll say, get up, it's time to get up. And it forces you to stop what you're doing and take a minute. I also set up little things. I don't know if you can see. I have a little cart here. So this is my art cart. So I have things that I obviously work with my clients and do art projects and things, but also I make art for myself occasionally just to kind of get out of my head. So that's right here next to me so that I have it. And then down here on the second shelf, you can't really see it, but down here on the second shelf is a snack so that I build these things in. If I can't get away from the computer that easily, they are still here for me so that I never don't check in with my self-care needs. A bottle of water, for example, things like that. And I think so those are some of the things that I would recommend. It is hard. And I think that part of it is really a bigger question about having boundaries about our time. Now that things, I'm sorry if you can hear my infant, he's crying a couple rooms away. But boundaries about our time, especially because we have now recognized how much work can be done online, okay, is really important. And in corporate, especially, I think that it's part of the culture to not have boundaries about our time. And we've seen within healthcare that this is just not going to work for the long term. It will not. If we are always on, always checking email, always available for that Zoom meeting, we find ourselves scheduled back to back to back. And you will burn hot, burn bright. Yeah, sure, you'll be productive for a little bit, but then inevitably it will be a problem. And we see this in some of the statistics coming out about burnout and about people leaving jobs and things of that nature. So we really want to be careful about that. And I think, especially now with the past year and the way that data is coming out, there's actually a lot of data coming out about how much time on the computer is expected to be appropriate for a workday. Because we all know we can pack things in, but is that really healthy? Is that really what we should be doing if we're not moving and we're sitting all the time? The other thing, and again, I personally haven't looked into it, but I did have a counselor friend of mine who purchased a pedal bike that goes under her desk. because she was like, I can't get away from being online. I have to be online for my clients, but I still want to keep moving. And she loved it. She loved being able to, she would be talking like this to you, but she'd be pedaling away. So she still got that movement in for the day. So pedal bike, some folks sit on a yoga ball with support so that you're not kind of all over the place or that you won't hurt yourself. They have the base so that it doesn't roll around. So the yoga ball is pretty affordable at like Walmart, I think. What else have I seen? Those are just some suggestions. So the alerts, calendar alerts, the sitting on a yoga ball or a pedal bike. But if purchasing things is out of the question, because I get it, everybody's strapped right now with the last year, the way that things have kind of unfolded. Doing the alerts and just reminding yourself to maybe, hey, get up, go for a little walk, or hey, do some jumping jacks in place, or maybe some gentle stretches. One of the things, I work with a lot of children, and one of the things that I really enjoy building into my therapeutic sessions with children is doing some yoga. At the end of our session, hey, I have these cards, yoga cards, and the kids can pick a card, or pick different things and whatever works for them, and we do the yoga pose together. So building it in. I don't know if that would work for a business meeting. At the end of the business meeting, everybody picks a yoga pose, but it's it's just a thought. So I hope that some of those suggestions are helpful. Absolutely. So we're wrapping up at 1 o'clock. The last 15 minutes were for questions, and so there are a couple more minutes if we have any more questions. I can also put the slide back up if anybody needs any of the resources. I will wait a minute just to make sure if there's any more questions. These are great questions. I hope they were helpful. I'm trying to think too. Calm.com is stories. Mindful.org might have some resources on listening, like music for relaxation purposes. Also, if you're interested in more of a therapeutic experience of music listening for relaxation, you might find specifically a guided imagery and music therapist. Guided imagery music therapists have years and years and years of training, and they do a phenomenal job of doing deep therapeutic work with the mind, and essentially it's the process of guiding people through experiences while listening to specific classical pieces of music. It's really quite profound. So if you're ever interested in that, you can send me an email and I can help connect you with a therapist. And if there aren't any more questions, I will reshare this last piece. Let me just hang on 1 second, because it's going to share the survey. Make sure, if you can, please do the survey as a reminder. And I will just put this up in case anybody wants my email. There's this. All right. So once again, just to end, if anybody has any questions concerning what I do, right, about my clinic, website is here at wessettherapy.com. And if you have any particular questions about the presentation today, about music therapy or guided imagery and music therapy for relaxation, you can email me here. And it's been a pleasure. And I hope you all have a beautiful day. It is somewhat, I hope it's clearing a little bit. It was a little cloudy earlier today. But all right. Thank you so much, and we will see you all soon. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you. Thanks so much. Give it a thumbs up. Okay, great. All right. Thanks, everybody.